74 matches, 1,124 sixes, and endless nail biting finishes later, the 2023 IPL season has finally come to an end, with CSK winning their fifth title. Gujarat had topped the table and had looked in pole position across this 3 day final due to the incessant rain. Beyond that, it had been constantly talked about as the possible final season for the league's favourite marketable son, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, and that too a month away from his 42nd birthday. Despite his own first ball tuck, CSK chased down 171 on the last ball of a 15-over chase, with every other batter contributing. How fitting then for the legacy he leaves behind. But the bigger story was the way the final of this tournament resembled the 2021 World Test Championship final, with reserve days and soaking wet outfields. Of course, it was absolutely necessary to have such a reserve day, although I can't remember the last time an IPL run chase kicked off well after midnight. When we look at the average scheduling times of IPL matches, that can seem somewhat farcical, especially since the richest cricket board didn't think to invest in full ground covers for its grandest venue. The real farce, however, is that we even saw so much rain in Ahmedabad in May. This is a semi-arid city in a semi-arid state, where the average temperature in peak summer soars above 40 degrees, and we're nowhere near the monsoon season yet. Now, I'm not a meteorologist, but to my untrained eye, the way this 3 day T20 final unfolded can only mean one thing. Cricket's powers that be can no longer brush aside the issue of climate change. In recent years, the ICC has actively set up camp in and courted sponsorships from oil-rich Gulf states. Meanwhile, in 2018, Gujarat-based officials at the Indian Meteorological Department had released a research paper predicting a fiery future for the state. This future involves an increase by 3.3 degrees Celsius in the average summer temperature and an increase by 4.5 degrees in the average winter temperature by the end of this century. The next decade alone is expected to have increases of 0.5 and 0.8 degrees respectively. More importantly, this study claims that the hotter the summer is would result in this semi-arid state experiencing more extreme weather and increased rainfall. The prognosis for the 2040s onwards shows figures above 10% of rainfall, while the next decade predicts a 2% rise in rainfall. Perhaps we saw some of this 2% in action in Motera this past weekend. This 2018 story on the IMD paper was reported by the Times of India's Parth Shastri. In keeping with the climate change theme, I also wanted to bring up a fantastic research compilation over at Splana, anchored by Rachel John. The compilation cites multiple stories and research projects, which show how cricket can be the sport most affected by climate change in nearly all facets. In particular, extreme heat creating more batting-friendly flat tracks, and the erratic changes to traditional season cycles, adding more variables to the pitch's behavior across multiple innings. Splana cites one such research project as summing up the issue like so. Of all the major pitch sports, cricket will be hardest hit by climate change. Whether Mumbai, Melbourne, Antigua, or Lancashire, cricket is defined almost entirely by the climatic conditions. If they change, so does the essence of the game. Moving away from the doom and gloom, though, I wanted to also give you my retrospective picks of the season, since this is our last episode of IPL Insights. There were plenty of familiar faces who led their respective teams to victories, but the league also featured relatively under-the-radar names stepping up big time. 5 Indians and 5 foreigners in particular stood out. All 5 Indian breakout stars are uncapped, but an India call-up is long overdue for at least one of them. And that is none other than the Rajasthan Royals opener Yashasvi Jaiswal. We've spoken about his quality and performances in multiple videos, but the short version is this. He was a shoo-in for the league's best Indian opener before Shubman Gill's 2 late-season centuries. There are 2 other Indian batters on my list. One broke the internet for KKR early into the season, while the other consistently chugged along in a mediocre Punjab side. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm talking about Rinku Singh and Prabh Simran Singh, whose season strike rates were both around the 150 mark. The remaining 2 breakout Indians are both right-arm seam bowlers who had contrasting trends this season, but their respective final spells turned out very similar. CSK's Tushar Deshpande was a regular competitor for the Purple Cap with 21 wickets, but his economy rate of around 10 led writer Jared Kimber to quip that Deshpande is, quote, trolling the league, and specifically this Purple Cap race. But his penchant for dismissing batsmen in what are considered the hardest overs to bowl in T20 made him a certain breakout star in a champion side. Mumbai's Akash Madhwal, on the other hand, was initially an afterthought in the squad and he didn't get a look in until halfway through the season, with his team reeling in mid table mediocrity. Despite a rough debut, he soon came into his own with key spells against the Titans and the Sunrisers. But it was his match winning 5 for 5 against Lucknow in the Eliminator that showed us something truly special. My breakout foreigner picks feature two batsmen, two pacers, and one spinner. The spinner is by far the most obvious pick because it is the teenage Afghan Noor Ahmed. 16 wickets at an economy of under 8 says it all. The pacers are also somewhat obvious. Sri Lankan round arm bowling sensation Matisha Patirana, who dominated the death overs, and Lucknow's Naveen ul Haq, the aggressive Afghan who deputized magnificently for Mark Wood. The batters, however, come from the bottom of the table, existing as shining lights in a sea of underperformance. Sunrisers South African keeper batter Heinrich Klaasen scored 448 runs at a strike rate of 177 as he went far beyond his specialist role of smashing spin in the middle overs and got a well-deserved century in a typically losing cause against RCB. Delhi Capital's Phil Salt was another mid-season selection, but he plugged two gaping holes for the beleaguered franchise. He capably replaced Rishabh Pant with the gloves and provided that top-order intent that Prithvi Shaw had lacked. All in all, Salt scored just over 200 runs in 9 innings, but it was at a strike rate of nearly 164. And finally, here are my picks for the team of the tournament. The top two, the Orange Cap, Shubman Gill and Faf du Plessis, picked themselves as the openers. The middle order is beefed up by Surya Kumar Yadav and Glenn Maxwell, both of whom recorded the highest strike rates this season for batters with a minimum of 14 innings. Coming after them is Heinrich Klaasen, whom we just spoke about, and Ravindra Jadeja, who not only hit the winning runs last night, but has also been CSK's go-to enforcer with bat and ball. The second all-rounder in my lineup is Rashid Khan, who needs no introduction. Then we get into the bowling attack, and you'll notice that aside from Rashid, I included the rest of the top four in the purple cap race. Piyush Chawla, Mohit Sharma, and Mohammad Shami. In keeping with this four-foreigner limit, Mohammad Siraj makes it as a third pacer due to his consistently accurate performances with the new ball. With that, we come to the end of our series. Thank you so much for watching all the way through and stay tuned as we shift our focus to the World Chess Championship final in a week's time.